I'm Joel Mokyr.
I am both personally and academically monogamous.
I've been married to the same woman for, hold on to your seat now, 56 years. And I've been employed by this university for 51 years. The best time to be born in human history is 2025. Life today on this planet, despite various problems here and there, is better than it was in the past. I've been married to the same woman for, hold on to your seat now, 56 years. And I've been employed by this university for 51 years. So I'm one of the more boring people to go to Stockholm, since almost everybody I looked at has changed jobs. I don't know about wives, okay? They don't tell you that, but I'm boring. Try to be nice to your students. They're having a hard time often, and many of them are complain that they are intimidated by the faculty. I've supervised and chaired dissertations of something around 65 students in my years at Northwestern, most of them here in economics, a handful in history. You know, I have a double appointment both in economics and in history. And once after I got the prize, somebody posted somewhere on the cyberspace saying, Joel Mokyr doesn't have former students, he only has students. And that was, I thought, very sweet and very nice, because it's true. I mean, my former students, even students that I had, 40 years ago, still send me their papers and still send me their manuscripts, and, on and on. So I stay in touch with, I would say, most of them.
I had one student from an undergraduate who took my course in 1976. And the first sentence was correct, and you probably don't remember me. And I had to admit I didn't, but it was very nice. He said, your course changed my life. I think that's probably a bit hyperbole. But, these are sort of heartwarming people from your remote past who say, I took your course in, 40 years ago, and I still remember it's one of the best courses I took at Northwestern. So that's kind of gives you a bit of a nice feeling, like you haven't wasted the last 50 years.
Well, this is an excellent department. We're probably ranked 7th in the world or something like that. It's outstanding. I think there are at least 3 or 4 more people in this department who I would think are possible Nobel Prize candidates, and even the others. They're just editors of the main journals, members of the American Academy. You go on and on. This is a very distinguished department. Academia in general is, of course, a little bit in trouble these days because of what's happening in the world or in the country. But this department will weather it because we're such high quality.
Mathematics.
Mathematics.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, without a question. Because mathematics is not really a discipline, it's a tool. There is such a field as pure mathematics, I should say, in which people do nothing but math. Other fields, and that's true for economics, it's true for physics, it's true for biology, you need mathematical tools. But you also you have to force yourself to think logically, and math makes you think logically. What is true, what is untrue, how do you prove a proposition? Nothing like it.
Here is my lesson to all undergraduates, and that is the good old days were old but not good. The best time to be born in human history is 2025. Life today on this planet, despite various problems here and there, is better than it was in the past. And that was even true 10 years ago. And we keep improving things across the board, whether it's in human communications, it's in, social media, it's in medicine, it's how to cope with climate change, you name it. Things are better than they used to be, and they will continue to get better, at least in terms of material life. Now, whether people will be happier, that's not mine to decide. That's the psychology department or the social department. I don't know what happiness even means, but I know what material conditions of life means. Like, what's the infant mortality rate? How well are people nourished? Can they, live comfortably on their income in terms of they don't have to worry where their next meal is going to come from? And those things we can measure as economists quite well, and we do so.
The United Nations had some kind of target, which they call sort of the millennial program, and we actually exceeded it long before the deadline in terms of rising income per capita. So, the world is getting better off materially. And I'll give you one sort of illustration of this, which, my students will learn if you take my course. We are taller than we used to be. Now you may say, why is that good? I don't know if it's good or not, but it reflects something. It reflects the fact that we are better fed as children and we're less sick. And so we can actually, there's some kind of biological maximum that people can grow into, and I'm not sure what it is, but it's, something around, for men maybe 6'2" or something like that, and for women maybe 5'6". But most people in history were much shorter than that, because as children they were malnourished, they were sick a lot, they were underfed, and they didn't fully develop to their full potential. Today we are reaching that potential, and which is one reason why we are today, the average height in the US is something like 5'11". It used to be 5'6". That's huge, by the way. I mean, it sounds like 5 inch. It's huge, trust me.
Learn how to learn. Today we're living in a world that is changing so quickly that flexibility and agility are critical. So you may train yourself to go to medical school and become a radiologist, but it's not impossible that radiologists will all be replaced by AI. In fact, we're moving there. And so you ought to be prepared that, if one day the demand for radiologists collapses, that you can go into anesthesiology. I'm not sure how easy that transition is. I'm not a doctor, but that kind of flexibility is really critical. You're going to be a journalist. Now think about the fact that journalism is threatened today by algorithms writing much of the news. So you might want to get ready to do something else. Maybe write commercials, maybe teach, kids in high school. I don't know what, but keep an open mind and be flexible. I have no idea. I'm going to turn 80 this summer, and what's next is to stick around as long as I can. America, unlike most other countries, has no mandatory retirement for professors. So I can stick around as long as I want, or until, at some point I can no longer, perform. But I'm going to stick around this place in both departments and participate in their activities, train my graduate students. I just publish, I want you to. November 4th is the publication date of this book. So I'm working on another book. Unfortunately, since I won the Nobel Prize, I hadn't much time to think about it because my phone keeps ringing, and at some point I had 1,400 unanswered emails. Which, that's a really scary feeling. Like, how am I ever going to climb this mountain of unanswered emails? But eventually, I'll conquer it. And so then I want to go back to work. I'm teaching 2 courses in the winter. Both of them in economic history, one graduate, one undergraduate. And then I have a whole line of lectures lined up in a host of remote countries. coffee and email, and then walk my dog, in that order. I have an espresso machine, and I make my coffee in my espresso machine. On good days, if my wife is awake, she makes me drip coffee. I would say almost all of my reading is professional, because the amount of stuff that's coming out is so fast, and field is so active that if you don't spend a lot of time reading papers, usually before they get published, like in working papers, you're not keeping up with the profession. And I'm a keeper-upper, so I spend a lot of reading. On airplanes, I usually read spy novels or watch spy movies on my iPad. This was written by my Northwestern colleague, Jonathan Hughes. If you've read this book, you sort of can call yourself an economic historian. It is an extraordinarily well-written book about a bunch of sort of critical people in American, sort of, I would say, economic history, but it also includes business history. So he is discussing, I'll tell you exactly whom, so I don't miss anybody, but he's discussing all kinds of sort of pivotal people in American history. So among them are people like William Penn, who founded Pennsylvania, Brigham Young, who founded the Mormon religion, or at least the settlement of the Mormon religion, and then great inventors like Eli Whitney and Thomas Edison, great innovators like Carnegie and Henry Ford, and then finally people who became very important in developing the American bureaucracy. It is a magnificent book. A favorite film, of course. There is the greatest film producer of the 20th century was a man called Milos Forman. Amadeus, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Hair. The movie Hair, not the musical. The movie is better. I saw the musical and I saw the movie. The movie is 10 times better than anything you can do on stage. My favorite TV show, CNN. I'm a news addict, a real junkie for daily events, which are very frustrating and very depressing, but I always feel that if I don't know it, it's not happening. Maybe that might not be such a bad idea, My only daily responsibility is to cook dinner every day, which I've been doing since I got married. I just finished cooking a fresh mushroom soup, which was, which I know how to make. Well, I'm a soup guy, so I make bean soup and pea soup and chicken soup and mushroom soup and lentil soup. I like these kinds of things. Heavy soups, particularly in the winter, they're really nice. I make a mean Dutch pea soup, but I can't tell you what goes into it because I have a lot of Jewish friends, and I put in all kinds of prohibited animals. Pea soup has pork feet in it. This is what my mother used to make. And I know one place where I can buy pork feet. You have to boil them a long time and then basically skim off the fat, because they always have a lot of fat, but what's left is delicious. Trust me. Okay, I would be in music school, and I would teach a course on how to enjoy classical music. That's another one of my weaknesses. I'm a classical music. When you walked into the room, you could hear some classical music. I listen to classical music. Have been doing so for 65 years, since I was 15. I could easily teach a course, and I'm not a musicologist, and I don't play any instrument, but I know classical music, and not just the sort of war horses, Beethoven's Fifth, and things like that. I really know classical music. I could easily teach a course in it. Now, it would be an amateurish kind of thing, because you have to have training, you have to understand all kinds of things that I don't fully understand. But I just love this stuff.